Auto-Animate is an add-on that allows you to generate and save animations, and in this video I'll show you why it's a good add-on to have, especially if you're in product animation, and I'm also going to show you step by step how it works. So first of all, the why. Let's say you do product animations for clients, or you just want to build things faster for yourself. That's where this add-on comes in really handy. Why? Well, let me give you an example. So let's say for the first client you made 3 awesome looking animations. Now you want to store them into Auto-Animate, and then for the next client you have 3 animations ready to use straight away. So what you do is you make 3 new animations and you use the old 3, and now you have 6 animations. And then for the next client you will do the same thing. You have 3 animations that you build again, you will make your own legendary animations, you store them into Auto-Animate, and now you have 9 animations. So for the 4th client basically you don't have to do anything at all. That's the entire reason why I made this add-on, so that you can work faster, make animations quicker, especially when it's the boring stuff, or if you already spent a lot of time putting in quality work to make your animations. Now you can actually store that energy, store your own work, and use it again when you have a new client or when you want to use it in one of your own projects. So basically that's called the compounding effect. So over time when you use Auto-Animate, the more animations you have, the faster you will be able to work, the more clients you will be able to handle in a shorter amount of time, which means that you will be able to make more money if that is your goal. Now there's also other functions in Auto-Animate, namely the animation generation function, which is used for simple animations such as moving forward or moving backward. And if you're on this channel, you probably know that I dropped 3 free courses, and you are probably familiar with this sentence. Very fast in the beginning, and it's going to be slowing down near the end. Why? Because we want it to be fast in the beginning. I want it to be very fast in the beginning. Fast in the beginning, slows down over time. And that is one of the things that we can do in Auto-Animate. So first of all, I'm going to show you step by step how to generate animations. Then I'm going to show you how to save those animations. And finally, I'm going to show you how to use the random animation generator for when you lack inspiration. So first of all, I'm going to show you how to install the add-on properly. First, we go to the edit mode, preferences, and then under add-ons, you can move towards this little tab and install from disk. Then you've got the folder somewhere on your computer, probably on the downloads folder. You are allowed to move it, it doesn't really matter. As you can see, I've got a couple of versions that I played around with, and I'm going to click on this one. Then you want to click on the zip file and click install from disk. You don't have to open or extract the zip file at all because Blender is able to handle it from the .zip format. You can simply click on the zip file and click on install from disk. And then right over here, you will see that this is Auto-Animate Premium. So now if you press on N, it will open up the side menu right over here, and you will see Auto-Animate. This is the add-on. And just to show that it is a one-click animation tool, I'm going to click on Create Animation, and right now we have an iPhone that moves. Of course, it's not really that visible in render mode, but right here you can see that we have a pretty cool linear animation. Now, as you can see, this spans for 24 frames because it's going from 1 to 25. I'm going to show you exactly how this add-on works. So we have the space-time feature right here. If you open this up, you get duration, distance, and axis. I'm going to turn this on so you can actually see the axis, but the red one is the x-axis. And we just generated an animation on the x-axis for 24 frames with a distance of 5. Now the distance of 5 actually means that we are moving 5 of those blocks right here that you can see in the grayish tone in the UI. So this is 5 meters, and that is just the way Blender works. So if you can see, we just moved this origin point to the 5 meter mark exactly. From right over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's moving over here. So that's the way that you can actually see that. Now let's say I want this animation to take twice as long. I've got my FPS right here on 24, which means that 24 frames is going to be 1 second, because it's frames per second. Now if I change this into 48, then it will take 2 seconds. So if I create this animation, you will see that the keyframe in the timeline has shifted towards frame 49, because we are starting on 1. Of course, if you want to start on 0, that's totally fine as well. It would be a bit more intuitive. However, I don't mind that much because I trust the system. And now you can see that it's moving 5 meters within 2 seconds. That's the way that works. And in this way, you can really dial in the amount of frames that you want this animation to take place. So let's say I want it to be 3 seconds, but I also want it to move double the distance. So 10 distance. So it's going to move to right over here because those thicker lines signal that it is 10 meters. Create animation. You can already see that the timeline has shifted over to frame 73, and I'm going to play this, and logically it is going to move to the 10 meter mark within 3 seconds. And that's exactly how you do it. Now, this animation is not that special yet. So before we go over to the rotation, scale, handles, and delta transform, I'm going to show you some animation presets. Because right over here, it is set to linear, but there are 7 presets that come with this. Now, as I just showed you, fast, slow, fast is actually very common in product animation. Why? Because you want to come in with your shot, then it's moving slowly so people can actually see what's going on, and then it's moving outwards so we can transition into the new shot. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it. Every telephone commercial uses this, all technology type product animations use this trick, because it's just a simple way to make the transitions flow over into each other much more smoothly. So I like the fast, slow, fast. So I'm going to click on it for now, and I'm going to apply the preset. And as you can see, it will move faster here, then it will slow down over here, and it will move faster towards the end. There you go. And this is just a way to transition into it nicely. Now, another preset that you can use, for example, is the fast slow. So it's coming in fast and then it slows down. This is also very popular. I'm going to click on apply preset, and basically that's enough. And the reason why there's an apply preset and a create animation button will be explained further down the line, because it makes sense, but you just need to know why that is. So the apply preset, fast in the beginning, slow towards the end. And we've made a lot of those animations during the free courses. And now obviously we also might want a rotation. So I'm going to close off the space-time. I think this is pretty clear. We have the duration, which is denoted in the amount of frames. So you can decide how many frames the animation should take place in, and the distance, which decides which way it's moving towards. You can also set this to whatever axis you like. Now I'm going to close this off. I'm going to open rotation, and I'm going to enable rotation. It is set by default to the Z-axis. I thought that was a bit more logical, because the Z-axis is usually what you rotate on, but it is also possible to set it to all, Y and X. So if you want to make an animation on all the axes, that's also possible. The Z-axis, however, is the one most commonly used. Obviously, this is X, Y, Z. So this one is the Z-axis. So let's say that we wanted to make a 360-degree rotation. I'm going to frame 1, I'm going to apply this preset, I'm going to click on play. There you go. And now it is making a 360-degree rotation, according to the preset. Now you can also set it to fast, slow, fast if you'd like. Apply preset, showing it, and moving away. Showing it, coming in fast, showing it, and moving away. Just to give you a bit more example of how this would look like in a camera view. Let's do something like this maybe. It's coming in, showing what it looks like, and it's moving out of frame, and we can enter into a new shot. Something like that. And of course, if the distance is not far enough, you can change the distance, obviously. Either way, this is the way the rotation works. So you have to enable it. It's not enabled by default. You have to turn it on. And here you can specify the degrees. Now, instead of 360 degrees, you can also set it to 180 degrees and apply the preset. And there you go. And then it's just moving around like that. And this is just a very simple way to make animations real quickly. So now we have an animation on the location and on the rotation. But you might be asking, what if I don't want a location animation? What if I only want to have a rotation animation? No problem. We're going right over here, going to the rotation, enable it, set it to 180 degrees. And instead of using the distance of 10, we are just simply going to set the distance to 0. And that will automatically place this iPhone in its own location. So let's apply this preset, and now it will rotate in place. Of course, you can use however many rotations you would like. Yeah, like that. Now I'm going to close all of this off, and finally we also have the scale. Now it's pretty self-explanatory what the scale does. I don't think you're going to use this a lot. There are some instances where you might, but I don't think this is going to be occurring a whole lot of times. So I'm going to enable the scale, and the scale is simply the factor by how much it should grow. So let's say it should be 2 times as big. So this iPhone will increase in size 2 times. Let's go over here, apply the preset, and you will see that the iPhone is growing. Now, what are the handles and what are the delta transform? In order to show that, I'm going to set up a real quick animation. I'm going to select the camera right over there. Space time, it should be 48 frames. Let's say it's going to move 5 meters instead of 10. And I want it to move on the Y-axis, so I'm going to set it to Y. Now, in this specific instance, I don't want to have a rotation, so I'm going to turn that off, and fast, slow is fine. Apply the preset, and let's see what it does. All right, so our camera is moving forward as the iPhone is making its animation. Let's see what it looks like. It could be quite cool, but I also think that the camera is already too close. Now, I don't want to move my camera backwards, then do the apply preset once again, and then it will work from there. That is a possibility though, it works pretty fine. If you want to make a lot of changes, but you don't want to change the animation, instead what we do is use the delta transform. So you can change the location on the X, on the Y, on the Z. You can change the rotation if you want to make it look at a different direction, and all that good stuff. So the delta scale as well, you can scale it up. Of course, this makes no sense for the camera, but let's say that you've made an animation for a very small object. Let's say a paperclip company came to you and they wanted to have product animations of paperclips, and you've got like this size paperclip. And then a coffee machine company comes to you and they ask you for a coffee machine. Now the animation is made for the paperclip, but you have a coffee machine now. So the coffee machine will be this small if you apply the animation. In order to counter that, you can change the scale and make sure that it always fits within your scene and within your camera. That's basically why this button is right over here. I hope that example was pretty clear. I'm going to speak a bit more about it during the saving animations process of this. We have got a camera animation, but let's say that you don't like the preset so much. There are two things that you can do. I've included this in here. You can also change it right over here, of course, but you can open up the handles. And the first handle is set to this preset. You can already see what this preset does. So if I apply this, this is the preset. Let's say I take the ease out and apply that preset. You can see that everything is changing, and you can see that reflected in the graph editor. So the linear one, obviously, is going to be linear in the graph editor, but it's also going to be reflected on the first and last handle in the handles. So apply, 0, 0, 0, 0. So there are no handles here. By the way, if you click on apply preset, it's going to apply it from whatever place in the timeline you start from. So if I wanted to start from frame 61, apply the preset and it's going to start from frame 61. Doesn't really matter. I like starting from 1 simply because it's a bit more clean for this demonstration. So let's say you want to update the handles. So right here, we want this handle to be different. Anyway, I'm going to set this to, let's say 0.3. And now if I click on apply preset, guess what's going to happen? It's going to return it to 0.8. So right here I'm going to set it to 0.3, and now I'm going to click on create animation. And you can see in the graph editor that something actually changed. So we've got our original preset that was already applied. I made changes to it, and now with the create animation button I can actually make those changes happen without applying the preset again. Because if you apply the preset, it will of course be a preset of the graph editor animation, of the F-curve. So right now I've changed the animation. It's a little bit different. So it is still moving and then it's slowing down. I can also set this to 0, update this animation, create animation. And now you will see that this line is on 0 because this is 0, it is entirely flat. But if you increase this one, create animation, it will move upwards. And this is the way to understand this. It's the X and Y values. So this is the Y value, this will bring it upwards. So if I set this to 1, for example, this will bring it upwards to 1. And if I set this to 0, it will move towards this area right over here, as you can see. And the same goes for the last handle. If I set this to 0, let's do so, and I set this to 1, let's say, it will move towards this wall. And in this way you can really manipulate the animations in whatever fashion you would like. You can see it reflected within the graph editor. It takes a little bit of practice to know what each handle does, but as you can see, once you understand, you can really make some slight changes and simply click on create animation. You don't even need the graph editor anymore. Play around with this and you'll figure it out soon enough. Either way, this is how all the animation generation works. You can change the space-time. So let's select our iPhone real quickly. It will be reflected in the graph editor. So let's say 72 frames. Let's do it for a distance of 10. Let's enable the rotation for 90 degrees this time, or 270 degrees. And then I'm going to the handles. I am first going to apply the preset, which is fast and slow, and it looks like this. But I want to make a slight change. I don't want this to be upwards this much, or I think it's starting too abruptly. I'm actually going to move this a bit downwards. I'm going to move that a bit more to the right, so it will end up somewhere over here. Create animation, that is the case. And now I'm going to delta transform because I believe it should move a bit more to the right because our camera is already located over here, pointing in that direction. So I wanted to start in the middle. So I'm going to set the delta location to this side, and now it is starting in the middle. And then I'm going into the camera and I will change this to the y-axis. It should be 72 frames, but I don't want it to move that much. I'm simply going to move it 3 meters. I want it to be fast, slow, fast in the beginning. Apply the preset, and now it is going to make an animation like this. So now finally we have a lot of things going on right here. We have our curve like this, but I want to reset everything because here the values are changed, here the values are changed, here some values are changed, the handles are changed, the delta transform is changed, and then you have to reset to default button. I have to be honest, this doesn't really work the way it was intended, so I'm going to fix that in version 2. But basically we have a lot of values right here and I don't know what the default was anymore, so I want to remove all of this and go back to default. I'm going to click on the reset to default button, and it actually works in setting it to default, but it's also scaling the iPhone down to 0 because the delta transform is on 0. So if you change the delta transform to 1, it will bring it back, but it doesn't actually remove the keyframes. So I already noticed that this was a problem. This is the way to reset all those values though. So you have to remove it manually and then you can start again from scratch. I'm going to fix that in the second version. I noticed it too late after I uploaded this add-on. Anyway, so let's go over this just a little bit more. We've got the space time. I want it to be 72 frames for a distance of 10, let's say. It should have a rotation for 360 degrees. And I'm going to set it to fast and then slow, apply the preset. But maybe I think it's just a little bit too fast in the beginning, so I'm going to open up the handles. I'm going to set this to 0.25, create animation, and now it's moving a bit differently than before. And I also want a camera animation, but this one should take place without a rotation on the y-axis. For a duration of 72 frames is fine, but I want it to move only 4 meters. And I'm going to set it to fast, slow, fast, apply the preset, create animation, let's go. And there you go, we have got a animation going on here. Very cool, so that's the way the animation generator works, and in this fashion you can make simple animations relatively quickly. So that's the way to generate animations, but where I really think this add-on shines is in your own creativity and in what you are able to save for yourself. Because actually handmade stuff is of course the quality work. So right over here we have a tab called Your Animations, and if you open this up you get a couple of buttons and a couple of things that you can select. Let's say you made a pretty cool looking animation and in the graph editor it looks like this. Of course this is not just a preset. This is a pretty high level animation that is going to be turning around like this. It's coming in, it's coming out, it's doing some pretty fancy stuff. Now let's say you created this animation by hand and now you want to use it in the next project. You can. You can simply click on this Save this legendary animation button and it will prompt you to give it a name. Make sure to give it a good name because you can't rename it as of yet. Legendary animation. And now it has been saved. You can actually see that it has been stored and the file location where that happened. Now I'm not going to have you open up that file location each and every single time. It's going to open it up automatically. If you click on this button and click on Load Presets, you will have the preset right over here, legendary animation. There's a different way to do this as well. I'm going to show you that later on. But here we've got this legendary animation selected. So let's bring in a cube and let's apply it right over there. And now you can see that the cube is moving in the exact same fashion. Let's delta transform this just real quick so we can see it beside each other. And it's actually doing that exact same animation. Now, as you may have noticed, the scale of the cube has changed. And why is that? Well, if you look at the original animation, it is actually scaled something like this. It was probably inverted or some stuff like that. If you want to change this, simply go back to the delta transform and play around with the scale. So if you want to change the scale of this afterwards, no problem. If you want to change the rotation or the way that it's coming in, no problem. It will still do the same animation, but from a different rotation angle. So in this way, you can really change the animation afterwards. So they are kind of unique in their own sense. Now here's another example that I'd like to show you. Let's say that we scale this cube like so. Now I'm going to make an animation real quickly, just something like this. I'm going to save this animation. I'm going to call it Not So Legendary Animation, and it is right over here. Now let's add a new cube. You can see it's a cube. I'm going to apply it, and what happens, let me show you, it is actually scaled to the same size as this one because there's a scale keyframe on this node because I pressed I. So in the graph editor, you can see there is scale. So in the case that your animation is scaled like this, but you don't want the scale to happen, what you actually need to do is go over into the graph editor, delete all the scale keyframes, press Ctrl A, apply the scale. And now, if you save this animation, let's call it Not So Legendary Animation 2, let's add in a new cube, and I will apply this one. Now you can see that it will remain its own scale. So that is something that you have to keep into account when you're going to save your animation. If it doesn't have a scaling animation, delete those keyframes. Otherwise, you would have to do it afterwards. So for this cube, for example, on which we applied it, we can go over to the graph editor, go to the scale, delete the scale keyframes, and turn it back into its original size. And you have to do that right over here in the Object Properties tab. You want it to be the scale of 1, and this is actually your cube. So if you made a mistake, no problem, you can still fix it afterwards, but it's better to prevent it from happening in the first place. So simply remove the scaling animation if there's no scaling animation applied to it. Or another option would be to go over here. Let's see, we've got a cube. And before you actually place the keyframes, so let's scale this outwards like this. Before you actually place the keyframes, Ctrl A and apply the scale. And look over here, by the way, you can see that it's 3.5 meters. Ctrl A, apply the scale, and now it's 1 by 1 by 1. So let's say I give this an animation real quickly. And then I'm going to bring in a new cube right over there, and I will bring in Not So Legendary Animation number 3, and that also works. So if you have scaled something, always apply the transform. So it is 1 by 1 by 1, basically. If you forgot to do that and you already placed the scale keyframes, remove them before saving the animation. Or if you already saved the animation, go back into the graph editor, remove the scale keyframes, and set it to 1 right over here. And then everything will be solved. So in all instances, there is a solution. So that is the correct way to save your animations. But now we've cluttered this up quite a bit. So if you want to remove those animations, you can simply click on remove. It will prompt you to say OK or cancel, simply if you press the button on accident. So click on OK, and now it will be removed. I'm going to remove this one as well, because I don't think these were as legendary as I thought they would be. So I'm going to remove all of those. Now there's one more thing. Let's say I made this animation right over here. I actually made it with rigid bodies, and it's part of the premium animations pack, just as all the other ones that I've shown you thus far. So the premium animation I just saved was the wild animation from the premium pack. And of course the crash landing is this one, which is made with rigid bodies, so you don't have to do rigid bodies. But let's say that we want to back up this animation as well. So let's call this cool landing. We've got a preset here, cool landing. And right here we have a button called Backup All Presets. And basically what it does is you can select a folder or specify where you want to save this. New folder, and let's call it Backup Animations, like this. Backup all presets. And now it has been backed up. I didn't give it a name, by the way, which is not the correct way to go about this. But by loading the presets, and I would never change the load animations right over here, simply go to this button, Import Presets, go to Downloads, Backup Animations, and you can select this JSON folder, and now it will have the right presets that you backed up right over there. And I would recommend doing this every once in a while, simply because the way this works, the load animations, it is placed within the add-on directory of the Blender version itself. So let's say that you're using Blender 4.2, you can't really open those animations in Blender 4.3 because it's part of Blender 4.2. It's really embedded in Blender 4.2. So if you try to open it in Blender 4.3, you will miss all your animations because they were saved in the folder of Blender 4.2. And that's why you need to save this one in a different location, and you can open it up in a different Blender version. So if you are going to update Blender as well, simply save all your animations and you'll be able to open it up in whatever Blender version you would like. It works in all Blender versions that I've tested, so from 3.6 all the way until 4.3 it works. Now the idea is that once you get this add-on, you go into all of your old files where you already have made some pretty cool looking animations, and you save them in the asset. And then afterwards, when you've got a new client or you got a new project or you made a new animation, you can save all of these animations, and over time the value of this add-on will increase. That's the way that I intended it, at least. So you can compound your quality work. Now basically all you have to do is set up the lighting and click on render. So that's the way that you save animations. I hope that was entirely clear. If it's not, there is an instruction manual that comes with the add-on. You can look over it and see how it works exactly. Now I'm going to close this off, I'm going to close this off, and we have the premium animations right over here. Now in the premium animations we have crash landing, for example, which is this one. And it allows you to throw objects on the table in whatever fashion you would like. Of course, there's a couple of other animations as well. I think there are 40 of them. Some of them have Latin names because I'm somewhat of a historical nerd. Some of them have these names. So the Apple animation is actually this animation from Apple. So let's apply the preset. Once again, you can use the delta transform to move it around in whatever fashion you would like. And then we got this animation by Insta360. You can place the camera, I don't know, somewhere like over here, like this, and then it will move towards that side, something like that. Of course, it would have been handy if I showed you the actual examples of this, so I'm going to add that to Gumroad and Blender Market very soon, so you can actually see how they were intended to use. Now, there's a couple of others. Sleeper cell, I don't know, let's see what it looks like. It's doing this. Sliding in, moving out. We've got rotatio progressiva. Oh, apply preset, just right over there, like that. And it's actually meant for the camera. So if you apply this to the camera, it will move in a rotationary fashion, and that makes it seem very cool for, I don't know, like a cool Brazilian or Latin type dance beat, like chick chick chick. You get the product coming towards you, something like that. Just play around with this. There's a lot of things. Some of them are called ProCam, which means that they are intended for the camera. So it's moving like this, click click click, something like that. And that is basically the way to use Auto-Animate on the premium animations. So now let's make an animation real quick for this iPhone to move forward a little bit. Let's open up the space-time. Let's apply the preset. It's moving backwards, so let's set the distance to -10 maybe. And then go to the first frame, apply preset, and now it's coming forward. Okay, pretty cool. Now, let's say I want to change the animation speed of this. I can open this up, set the scale factor to 2, and now it will be 2 times slower. As you can see, we've got a keyframe right over there, and it will be placed all the way over here. So now it is a whole lot slower. It is still doing its fast animation in the beginning thing, and it's moving very slowly, fast, slow, fast, and it's just going to stretch that out a bit. It's not going to be entirely accurate anymore with the presets. This is just a way to change the animation speed. Not that exciting or interesting, but it's just something that you might use. Let's add this, the only rotation, and apply the preset. And if I play this, it is moving only once. Now that is a problem. I maybe want to move it the entire time. So what I can do is open up the Cycles Modifier tab right over here, set it to Z-axis because I want the Z-axis to keep on moving. And I'm going to repeat this with offset and apply the modifier. Now what happens? It is going to continue rotating. What does this look like? It actually looks like the graph editor. I'm going to show you exactly. Right over here we've got the Z rotation, which is what we applied this to, the rotation on the Z-axis, repeat with offset. And repeat with offset is basically right over here in the modifiers. You go to cycles, set the after mode to repeat with offset. I've gone over this in several tutorials, but in this way you can extend an animation even though it was shorter. So let's say that the modifier did not exist. Then it would look like this, and you only have one animation, but now it's going to extend it all the way over there, and it's going to keep on rotating. Now let's say I want to do the same for the y-axis. I'm simply going to click on that one as well. And as you can see, we have a animation that is going to continue forever. You can also repeat it mirrored. So I'm going to select the y-axis. And now before we actually click that, this is rotating on one axis. Let's see what it looks like if we apply the modifier right now. It is going to move about like this. So now it is, the angle is like this. And here on this one, it is going to the top on the left. So it's shifted over. It is mirroring its rotationary axis. So that's just something that you might want to know or might want to use. If you want to keep repeating a certain animation, simply go over here. You can do it for location, rotation, scale, Z-axis, Y-axis, X-axis, and you have those 3 options as well, of course. And now finally, we have the AniGen right over here. So this is a random animation generator. Basically what it does, if you click on this button, it will generate a random animation. And I've included this in here simply if you are staring at your screen without inspiration, you don't know what to do, you don't know what animation types to make, you can simply get some inspiration from the animation generator. So let's click on this, and wow, it is being scaled like a funky thing. It's moving about all crazy and stuff. Let's turn off the scale. Let's turn off the free and factor, because those are pretty hard. They look like this in the graph editor, or they might look like that in the graph editor. The vector does at least, and the free, you don't know what you're going to get. Auto-Clamp is going to be quite smooth. So let's click on generate random animation. It's going to make it all the way until frame 200, and let's have a look at this. All right. And it's moving like that, and like this. Okay, pretty cool. Now, let's say that I'm quite inspired by this inspiration and I actually want to take some of it. So maybe this part right over here. I like this part right over here. So let's go over here to this keyframe, and I'm going to place a new one, press I. And then all this will be removed. And then this part I'm going to take until right over there, until it starts shifting back to this weird looking position. So move one frame forward, press I, then delete the rest. And I'm going to bring this to frame 0 or whatever. And now I've got my pretty cool new animation that was randomly generated, and I don't have to do anything at all. So that's the way you use that. If you run out of inspiration, you can simply use the random animation generator. Of course, in the graph editor, it looks like this. I'm going to set it to normalize so you can actually see what the curves look like. And the auto clamp is going to make things smooth. Now let's say you also want to use factor to generate a random animation. It is going to be very harsh. Now look at this. It's going to move around, do all this weird stuff. And now free looks like this. So it's going to do stuff like this. It's going to move about a bit. It's going to have some overshoot and stuff like that. If you like that, go ahead. I like the auto clamp best. So if I just use this, it usually gives the best results and some things that are pretty interesting. You can turn off rotation, generate a random animation, and now it's only doing it on location. Or you can do it only on the rotation as well. So if you want a cool looking rotation right here, do whatever you like. You can use AniGen in whatever fashion you would like. I just thought it would be pretty helpful if you are without inspiration, that you can just click on a button to create a random animation and then be inspired from it, or actually take a part of it that you think was pretty good. But that's basically it for Auto-Animate. We have the space-time, which is going to determine the duration and the distance of the animation. The rotation is going to determine how much it's going to rotate and on which axis. We have the scale, which is going to be a scale animation. The handles, which allow you to change the handles right here in the graph editor based on those presets. We've got the delta transform, which means that you can change the location of the object in your scene, or maybe even the rotation. If you have a different camera movement, for example, that you already made, but the object still needs to be in the frame, no problem, delta transform. We've got the animation presets. Try them out, try some different things. They all work pretty good. We have the apply preset, which applies the preset. If you click on the handles and change something, you can click on create animation and it changes it without applying the previous preset. And then we can go over to your animations. You can save this legendary animation, save it to the folder. You can make a backup of this animation. You can delete your animation. You can apply the animation, and you can import animations as well. And then in the premium animations, we have a big pile, a big stack of premium animations that you can add right here. Some of them are based on Apple or Dior, and some of them are based on rigid bodies. Some of them are just premium animations, and some of them are for the camera. Now, then we have the AniGen generator, which is going to generate random animations. We have the cycles modifier, which is also in the graph editor right here, but just a faster method to add mirrored motion or repeat offset motions. And then we have the animation speed, which is going to change the animation speed. Now, that's it for Auto-Animate. If you're interested in incorporating this into your workflow and saving some of your best animations instantly, then I highly recommend checking out Gumroad and Blender Market, where I have placed the add-on itself. Link is in the description. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you have any suggestions in order to make this add-on even better for you, then please let me know and I will work on it. Finally, check out Auto-Animate in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.
I get the money and it's right on cue. Keep the duffel bag up inside my coupe. Hold a couple racks, tell them I love you. You wanna be a boss, do it like I do.